Today has been a crazy day. Normally, I'm pretty grouchy, but today I learned my lesson. I woke up today at 5 in the morning when the sun came up, which was problem number 1. Let's just say I am not a morning person. I was super hungry, so I flew to a leaf with aphids nearby. Another ladybug who was way too friendly for my taste flew there too. I was not in the mood to have a conversation. This ladybug wanted to share the aphids with me, but no way! They're all mine! I tried picking a fight, but I realized this ladybug was too small for me. I decided I would fight someone bigger. I met a yellow jacket. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then I saw its stinger. They weren't big enough for me. Next, I met a beetle. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then they opened their jaw. They weren't big enough for me. Then, I met a praying mantis. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then I saw how long their front legs were. They weren't big enough for me. Soon after, I almost flew into a sparrow. I asked if they wanted to fight. Wow, their beak was sharp. They weren't big enough for me. Then, I met a lobster. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then they stretched their claws. They weren't big enough for me. An hour later, I bumped into a skunk. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then they started to lift their tail. They weren't big enough for me. Next, I met a boa constrictor. I asked if they wanted to fight, but they responded with, "Right after lunch." They weren't big enough for me. Soon, I met a hyena. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then they laughed and showed their teeth. They weren't big enough for me. Then, I met a gorilla. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then they beat their chest. They weren't big enough for me. After, I ran into a rhinoceros. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then they lowered their horn. They weren't big enough for me. Next, I encountered an elephant. I asked if they wanted to fight, but then they raised their trunk and showed off their big tusks. They weren't big enough for me. Then, I met a whale. I asked if they wanted to fight, but they didn't respond. They weren't big enough for me. I flew to one of the whale's flippers and asked if they wanted to fight. No answer. I flew to the whale's fin and asked if they wanted to fight. Still, no answer. I flew to the whale's tail and asked if they wanted to fight. And then all of a sudden, the whale slapped me so hard, I flew all across the sea and the land. I ended up right where I started this morning. The friendly ladybug was still there. I was wet, tired, and hungry. The friendly ladybug offered me some aphids for dinner. I'm very thankful for the new friend I made today, and I've learned that I just need to be as friendly as that very friendly ladybug.